Hi everyone. Today's topic is meetings. We wonder how meetings relate to business writing as opposed to business speaking, but good meetings depend on writing. For some people, good meeting is an oxymoron. So there's the classic Gilbert theory of meetings, right? But also this video. I recommend pausing what we're watching here and going to the slideshow and watching this video of every meeting ever. Um, It's pretty great. You can see some pretty terrible communicating happening. People don't know why they're there. They don't know what to accomplish. They don't know what they should do after the meeting. Writing would actually help solve these problems and more. So now we're going to go through the 7 deadly sins of bad meetings. Deadly sin number 1 is just showing up. The meeting where people just show up because they were told that there was a meeting. A bad meeting that lasts an hour doesn't just waste an hour. It wastes an hour times each person in the room. If 8 people show up for a meeting, that wastes 8 hours of time. Those people shouldn't arrive to a meeting the way that you show up for a movie. Nobody is prepared, they don't know what to talk about, and so a lot of times they just go with their gut reactions without having planned it or thought about it. In these cases, sometimes that participation, like in the Dilbert ad, the Dilbert cartoon, is actually worse than if they had said nothing at all because it's so uninformed. So, to solve that problem, you want to give away the ending of the meeting. Let everyone what the meeting is about. Let them know why they personally are needed there and what to expect in the meeting. So, you'll send them a letter or an email at least 2 days in advance telling them these sorts of things um, and include any documents you'll discuss in the meeting. So if I'm in marketing, I might go to a meeting about a product launch because they want me in marketing to publicize that launch. This helps me know what to be thinking about before the meeting even starts. And so now when I come to the meeting, I'm not just showing up, but I can actually participate in a meaningful way. Deadly sin number 2 is scheduling. Meetings are not places for announcements. This should be obvious, but you'd be surprised how many meetings are just telling people what's coming up. Um, this is not a meeting because you don't get the back and forth of discussion that the word meeting implies. This is just a telling. There are times, however, where you do need to coordinate schedules, and that is important, and find out when people are available. And sometimes people want to do this in a meeting because everyone is all together. You can do this through email, though. Instead of meeting in person to do the scheduling, you can use technology. So there's a link here to this tool Doodle. You should check that out. It's a great free software that lets people indicate their availability for events or other meetings. You can also use email or calendars, like on Outlook, to make announcements. You don't want to drown people in a lot of announcements, like the patio cafe does. Ugh, it's so awful. But you might want to consider, so instead of like having a ton of little announcements that you send out to everybody in the organization, you might consider bundling all of the announcements for like a weekly newsletter or maybe a monthly newsletter even to let people know, what's the events in the future. And then, reserving email for a reminder if it's something really important, like a mandatory training that everybody needs to go to that day. Like announcements, the telling meeting is not really a meeting. It's the meeting where someone or a committee report on their activities to the group. For this sin, someone gives a long oral report of where they are in a project and what they've discovered. It can be overload and irrelevant to the participants. Instead of just standing there saying it, email ahead of time. Aha, right? In that email, you can give them a copy of the full report or the summary of where you are right now, and then you can tell them what kind of feedback you're looking for. So, for example, you might say something like, "Here's my marketing report about moving our shops into Mexico. If marketing could look at the advertising section and let me know in the meeting if I left anything out, I would appreciate it." That way, in the meeting itself, you can give an outline of just the major points for other attendees to follow along, And this gives them something to take out of the meeting too, rather than relying on just a shaky memory of your oral report. Oh, that says along. You know what I mean. Deadly sin number 4 is the pointless meeting. Sometimes meetings happen just because the meetings happen. Regularly scheduled meetings can be great to get everybody on the same page and touch in with everybody, but sometimes people just have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. Like the room is scheduled, so we meet. People resent being there, and they don't know what they're supposed to accomplish. It really does just waste hours and hours of time. Instead, decide ahead of time what the objective of the meeting is. So in that video, right, the leader said, we're here because we're going to come up with some sort of marketing event. Keep that objective modest when you think about your objectives. So you're probably not going to do a complete reorganization of the entire company in 1 hour, right? So think about the amount of time you have, who's available, and what you have the authority to do, right? Because it may depend on your position, and come up with some clear objectives. So clear objectives could be something like decide which of the candidates who applied that we want to invite for an interview, or choose events for an employee appreciation week. These are the kinds of things that you can definitively see that you've done. Remind people of this objective periodically to stay on topic. You might consider writing the objective in the agenda or on a whiteboard to remind the attendees what you're really focusing on. So, let people know this is what we're doing so they don't get off topic. Deadly sin number 5 is the headless meeting. Headless meetings means no one is in charge. These are meetings that happen usually in student groups than businesses, because usually in businesses you know who's clearly in charge. But sometimes, even in those cases, the official leader is shy of taking control. They might keep asking if anyone else is coming, or ask if the meeting should be delayed. So they're real wishy-washy. They let some attendees take over the meeting with long or irrelevant comments. They don't take charge of moving the meeting forward. It can be very frustrating. Instead, you can assign roles for the meeting. If it helps, you can break up some of the responsibilities of being in charge. So you could put one person in charge of each agenda item and write that on your agenda. So, Sally is in charge of the marketing section, Mark is in charge of the accounting section, whatever. Then you might also place somebody in charge of keeping the schedule on time. So in that video, you had the person who was always complaining about the time, and that's annoying. But it's also good to have somebody who's going to keep you on track, to make sure that the meeting doesn't go on for hours and hours without accomplishing anything. And of course, it can be useful to have a scribe who will take notes so that the rest of the group can just focus on what they're saying. And make sure those notes are something you can actually read. Deadly sin number 6 is to have nothing but talk. So these are the meetings where even if the conversation was good, every objective just evaporates after the meeting. So nobody remembers what was decided. They have the same conversations over and over again. Good conversations happen, but nobody knows what they're supposed to do. And then when the problems pop up again, they have the same thing. So instead, this is where that note keeper really comes in handy. So taking minutes, which is a specific kind of note-taking about each topic, and when it was talked about, so that's why it's called minutes, that will help people know what's happened. So saving the minutes in a way that lets others access them can be really useful, especially if it's in a searchable way. So you could put the minutes of your student organization, for example, on like a Dropbox so people can search it. You also may email those notes to the participants, especially highlighting any important decisions that were made or action items. Speaking of which, the last deadly sin is action empty meetings. So these are the meetings where people come to conclusions and decide something, but nothing happens. The meeting doesn't change anything. Without the action items, nothing happens. These are very disheartening because you put in all of the work of the meeting, right? Think about 8 hours of manpower, but then nothing happens. So it's all talk and no action. By making clear assignments and writing down the action items, people know what they should be doing after a meeting. Put these action items in the minutes, so in the notes that you keep of the meeting. But you can also additionally email everybody who was at the meeting the action items, and even email follow-ups to those who have action items. Set a deadline by which those items should be finished and who needs to be reported to about these action items. So here you have it, 7 deadly sins of meetings and how writing can help solve those problems. Email and objectives, agendas and minutes, all of these types of writing can make meetings more productive and more pleasant. In this class, you're going to hold a meeting with your group. You may have to hold this meeting online during our weekly Collaborate session, or you could do it on Skype, or you could meet in person at another time. In order for this not to be a meeting for the sake of a meeting, I highly encourage you to talk about the infographic midterm. So check it out in the folder, look at the assignment sheet, and make an agenda for what you want to talk about. Then you're going to meet and take minutes of the meeting. And then the agenda and the minutes are going to be graded as a group. So make sure that everybody approves them and has a chance to put input in on the agenda and minutes. I want it to look real solid. In real life, you would probably vote to approve the minutes and then have revisions after the meeting is long over. So for example, the next meeting. But in this case, just email it to each other or use Google Docs or something like that to make sure everybody agrees with the minutes. Anyway, good luck. And feel free to email me if you have questions because this is a little bit different of an assignment. All right, bye.